now we have the second part of the session today, talking about some basics of linguistics. I'm not going to go to the details. We have people from linguistics background. We had Sepide Demirci today. He's from the linguistics side. So if you have questions, we'll ask Sepide about the concepts related to linguistics. We're just giving you an overview about the concept of linguistics, which is really important to have a good understanding about. When we talk about linguistic part, we need to first of all realize about what we call phonology. So we need to think about how different words are being made from different phonemes and morphemes, and how different elements or auditory building blocks are putting together to make the language. So we need to have those building blocks. And there are different concepts there. We know that even different languages have different phonological structure. And there are definitely different technical details about that we can get into. And then we have what we call lexicon, which is about the entire words that we have in our repository. So most of the people have something like 100,000 words in their language repositories, and that would make what we call the lexicon, the amount of words that we have there. And it's also interesting, for example, when we talk emotions, how many emotional adjectives we have in our lexicon is going to be important in terms of how we are competent in understanding our emotions. So the lexicon that you have is critical in terms of how you are able to do some thought processes. If you have limited lexicon in specific areas, you will be in trouble to be able to do language and thought processes on those areas. And I will get to that later on in more detail. And then we have what we call morphology and syntax in terms of how these basically words are going to be formed to each other to make sentences, and having different intonations in different parts of the sentences, how we put question marks, how we convey different informations with the same sentence, with just changing the intonation of different parts of the sentence or different parts of the words. So those pieces are working together to be able to make sentences and phrases. And then we have what we call semantics. So when we combine those things together, then we can have meaning and concepts in the form of semantics. And then things would be conveying beliefs and thoughts and emotions and desires. And then this is how we start from mouths and ears and end up to beliefs and desires, and how these things are related to each other. And then how you can see these elements are related to what we call literature. And we had people from, let's say, literature side here today. So how these things are related to each other is going to be critically interesting and exciting. In another kind of, let's say, categories discussing about these, let's say, basics of linguistics, to have just a sense about what we call linguistics, we have, as I told you, we have lexical items that are basically making our lexicon, and then some syntactic rules and representations that are making those sentences, okay? We have sensory motor system, which is using those lexicons or lexical items and syntax rules to be able to make sounds and gestures, or perceive sounds and gestures, okay? By basically perceiving or producing things with a sensory and motor interaction. Based on what we discussed from last session, I will kind of review them again today as well. And then we have what we call a conceptual intentional interface that would have concepts, intentions, reasoning, what we call schemas, different appraisals, different ways to process information, different algorithms, different thought processes that are happening here to basically interact with these other parts to make the language. So when we talk about language, it's not just about, let's say, words and lexicons and syntactic rules. It's also about how we make them happen in the process of production and perception, and how they are related to what we call concepts, intentions, reasoning, and how they interact with each other. In the same space, talking about a sentence, let's say the umpires talk to the players. Umpires usually means, we use that in mainly baseball here in US. It means the referee, like the referees that we have in soccer or football. We have sentences, we have phrases, we have words, we have morphemes, we have phonemes, and how these different pieces are working together in combination with semantics, syntax, lexicon, morphology, and phonology to be able to make language. So these concepts are highly interrelated to each other to technically make the language. And then how language is leading our thought process. Okay, so that was a really rapid overview about what we call linguistics. And I will discuss about neurolinguistics in the next section, discussing about how these processes are being processed inside the brain.